Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe, from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight, we are going to be talking about our time of transition, transformation, the one in which we leave this human body, and we go back to being the eternal soul, the eternal being in which we always were. What is it about? What is the near-death experience about? What is our sunset time about? And what is the time in which we fly? How can we have a different conversation versus all of the other conversations that we perhaps may see playing out in society, and maybe in our history, maybe on the television, or those who wish to be able to say, this is the way I perceive it, but yet we want to say, no, this is the way I wish to create it. How would you like to create your own exit? How would you like to be able to feel into the moment and understand the profound spiritual time in which you do let go of your human vehicle and be able to say, I am an eternal soul? What does that look like? Today, my guest is John Allen. His book is Heavenly Realms, A Journey into the Unknown, Discovering the Mysteries of Heaven and the Afterlife. John, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Oh, thanks for having me, Dr. Jeanette. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So glad to have you to talk about this topic. I've shared it on the radio now for over 15 years. I pretty much am almost 70. I've been living this my whole life, and this is how I see things. We talk about that time of life. Let's talk about near-death experiences for a moment. I've had hundreds of them my entire life. And people will say, oh, it's near-death. And I'll say, no, it's not. Your soul actually leaves. It goes over, it has a conversation, and it decides to come back or not. And they're like, whoa, wait a second. And everybody stops in their tracks. And they say, but that's not what I heard. That's not what other people have reported. It's not what I believe. Don't you think today what we're going to be talking about is challenging our beliefs?
Yeah, there's a great movie that I saw. Gosh, it was only maybe 6 months ago. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It's called Heaven is for Real, and it's based on a true story of a 4-year-old boy, and he doesn't actually die. He undergoes surgery, and while he's under and he's having the surgery, he does go over to heaven, and he comes back and he shares what he experienced, and it's a fascinating story. Like I say, it's based on a true story. He shares that he saw Jesus, and he saw his grandfather, and he saw his sister, and he didn't have a sister, or not a sister with red hair anyway. And when he speaks to his mum and dad, the mother is shocked because she had a miscarriage, I believe, and that was the little girl that he saw in this other place, which most of us call heaven. So it's mind-blowing. So again, near-death experiences, that's the genetic term for it, I think, right? But you don't necessarily have to die to go to that other side and come back.
It's really about your spirit and your soul taking a little adventure. For myself, being a medium, when I go to sleep at night, I am definitely out of body. I definitely, my energy goes someplace else. I have another experience, and then I come back in. It's been this way. This is who I am. Many people have reported very similar experiences. So if at any time you're having, let's say, surgery, I can remember being in open heart surgery, with medical school, and I would look at the patient, and they would stop the heart, and they would cut some of the vessels because they had to do bypasses, and they would put all the blood into the machine on the other side of the room. And I would say, oh, where is the person? And all of a sudden, something in my mind would say, look up to the upper corner, I'm up here. Their soul was up there watching the operation go on. And I think that's so vitally important to say. Isn't that awesome? So what we're talking about today is we're giving you options and possibilities of another way to look at this perspective. Because it's very scary for many, because really the only stories they've heard from before are the ones that seem to be drastic, or they seem to be very devastating, or they'd be a story about someone because all of their fears, they've concocted this story. And what you and I are going to be talking about is, can we change the story? Yes?
Right. Yeah. I mean, when I started writing books, which is 4 years ago, because I'd lost my father to cancer, and the books that I've written are really my journey, but it also, I share my research and interviews with priests and doctors and these people who've gone through near-death experiences too. My journey is I'm looking for answers. I want to understand more. But because of these signs that I'm receiving from my dad, I can't help but believe 100% that there is another side. That when our body decides to shut down and says, you know what, this is the end of my life here, our spirit goes over, and it's just out there. Now, call it heaven, call it whatever you will, but there is life after this. I 100% believe that. Otherwise, how can my dad be sending these quite obvious signs that come up from my dad? But it's not that I'm trying to convince other people to believe what I'm believing. I'm just trying to share what I'm going through and then leave it to other people to decide, you know? Right.
It's about being able to open the door to possibilities. That's what we're doing today, is we're opening the door and saying, what if? You know, I think about myself so many different times. I always know about when someone's going to pass on. I'll get their symptoms 2 or 3 days. Then I'll get a phone call 2 or 3 days later. So-and-so passed. This is how they passed. I'll say, yeah, I know. I was with them. You know, or I can even think about my aunt that had passed. And the night before I got the phone call, I saw her in my mind and my thoughts, and I could see her. I was standing on the sidelines, and I was watching her go down this big road, and there were all of these little kids there, and they were all clapping, and yahoo, and we are so glad to see you kind of idea. In essence, in her life, she worked at a children's hospital for over 50 years. The children that had passed away very early. And they were there to welcome her. And I said, isn't that awesome? And then I got the call the next day. So I think the idea is that, can we understand we are energy beings, number one. So when we're thinking about them or when we feel something from them, we are feeling the energy of them. It's not that they're over there on the other side looking and doing things that we think they would be doing in the human context, because they are an energy being now. So whatever we are constructing about the story, it's in our minds and our thoughts. Perhaps?
Yes, I mean, my wife will often say to me, well, if you're receiving signs or things here from your dad, how can your dad be here? Why isn't he over in England with your mother? And it's like, well, we're thinking of it the wrong way. I think our spirit, I don't know the answer. I'm just assuming here, right? Because I don't know. But I believe that once we cross over to the other side, our spirit and our soul is everywhere. You know, we are one with the universe. We're connected. We feel we know everything. It's like an unlimited memory bank on your computer. You know, it consumes everything. So my dad's spirit can see me, feel me, know what I need, know what I'm doing, and also at the same time simultaneously know what my sister, you know, my mum and my other family members are too, and my daughter over here, and his great-grandson, my grandson. So we're thinking about it from a human perspective when, I believe, like you said, when we cross over, it's totally different. It's complete and utter love, and you're one with the cosmos, and you just see and know everything. But yeah, my journey is still searching for these answers. Sadly, there's some people who write to me and say, well, where's the proof? Show me. And it's like, well, I love my wife, but I don't know how I can show you I love my wife. But I do love her. But how can they prove? There's just some things in life right now that we're unable to prove. It's like gravity. I'm sure you believe in gravity. I believe in gravity. But how can they prove it? I'm not a physicist. I wouldn't know how to begin to prove gravity. but it's just that I know it's there. I believe in it, just like I believe in the afterlife, and I believe there's another place for us. I'll call it heaven. Many call it something else, but I believe,
I think we get stuck in the idea of the human story. If we could say that there is something bigger or grander that gave us the breath of life, and also, too, when we end our breath of life, there's something grander, we would say, period, that's it, and leave that on the shelf. Because once we start asking the other questions, that's a human mind that's saying that. If I stub my toe, why didn't it bleed? If I took my vitamins, I'm not going to get sick. If I take this drug, I won't die. If I plug in a light switch, the lights will go on. That's all about outcomes. A plus B equals C kind of idea. We all learned that in chemistry. We learned that in calculus and everything else. But the idea is that we've really gotten to the idea of this human construct, and we've been so stuck in it that we can't understand anything else. I think about myself. In the early 60s, I used to play the pipe organ in the Catholic Church when I was in 4th and 5th grade, all the way up till 12th grade, maybe 5 or 6, 7 masses a week. And I would sing the Latin Mass with the priest, and that was when the priest had his back to us, and he was singing the whole Mass in Latin. And there was an absolute mystique about the Mass that you just would go in and you would just leave your humanness outside because you're coming into this real religious time, and spiritual time where you didn't know. You didn't have to have the answers. You didn't always clamoring, tell me, tell me, tell me. But then one day, I can distinctly remember the day, they turned around the altar, the church went to English, and they brought in a guitar, and I said, whoops, I'm out of here. You've now taken away the mystery of the religion, and you're now putting it in a human dogma because we demand to have to know. Well, guess what happened to Catholic churches? We now look at the year 2025, probably over half of them across the globe have been closed. And religions, probably almost half of the people no longer believe any, quote, religion. So I think the idea is that can we allow ourselves to understand that there's a story that's greater than, bigger than us, that gave us breath, and just be okay with that. And understand that that's when there's also, when the breath removes, that we are something greater than that. We are an eternal soul. Are we allowing ourselves that conversation?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know whether it's because of social media, the internet, cell phones. I don't know, but certainly religion is being challenged more today than it's ever been. It's been questioned more. And, I'm personally looking for answers because I'm looking for answers. I'm not trying to dispel any religion. I'm just looking for answers as to what happens on the other side when we come to the end of this life. This is the reason why I wrote this particular book, Heavenly Realms, is I'm focus on the different religions and what they believe there is life after this. What do they perceive heaven to be? And it fascinated me because the different religions portray it in slightly different ways. But yeah, sadly, when you go to church, I used to go to church when I was an altar boy for many, many years, a lot younger. But every week I was going to church. But sadly, I say sadly, I haven't been to church for decades now. Yeah, so the reason why I wrote Heavenly Realms is because at this point, and this came out earlier this year, I was intrigued and curious about what other religions believe heaven is or the afterlife is, and where do we go once we leave this world. And I was blown away by what I found. And again, I spoke to other priests and many other different people and pastors over here to get their opinions on it too. And it just fascinated me. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in the religion, but like I say, it is being challenged more today, which is sad, and it has turned a lot of people off. And again, on my social media pages, on Facebook and Instagram, such people are writing, I'd say 95% is positive, but there are some naysayers who wanted to spell it all and say, no, it's all hogwash, it's not true, and blah, blah, but there's no proof, there's no evidence, and that's okay. I respect their opinion, but for me personally, I think there's plenty of proof out there. if you want to spend the time and just look. It's not hard to find. And just like you, there's many people out there with a gift. I had an experience only two weeks ago. I was at my grandson's birthday party. My wife and I were there, of course, and we're at our daughter's house. And her husband's parents were there, right? And they're a lovely couple, and they came over. They're about our age, and they came over to us. And the mother said to me, "Rich, there's something I need to tell you." And I said, "Oh, what's going on?" And she goes, "Well, I went to see a psychic last week."
Yeah.
And the psychic, when I was sitting with her, said to me, "Do you know somebody called Richard?" And she goes, "I do." And she said, "Well, there's a man here called John, and he's here for Richard, and he wants Richard to know that he's here for him." And I was like, oh my, I broke down, I was crying, and I said, I can't believe that. And I guess my point is that people have been born with a gift, or they develop this gift where they can communicate with the other side, with the other spirits and the other loved ones, and they can pass on those messages. They have those thoughts, those feelings transposed or transferred to them, and they can share it with us in this world. But I keep an open mind too, Dr. Jeanette. I mean, what are the chances this psychic would put those two names together, that my first name is Richard, my middle name is John, but my dad's name is John? How could she say, "Do you know somebody called Richard? There's a man here called John"? I mean, the odds of that happening are very slim, I'm sure. And to tell this lady then who tells me that story, it just blew me away. And again, it just goes in that bucket that I believe, that there is life after this, and that my dad was sending a message to me.
If you think about it, when you're going through that gate, I always say when it's your time and it's your last breath, you go through the door, this little tiny hole, and pop, everything of your humanness stays on the earth. Everything. You're not going to be carrying your obituary with you or all your shame and your guilt with you to the other side. Everything 100% stays in the earthly plane. So if that is true, and then you go on to be an eternal soul, you have everything else to do. It's just about energy. So if this energy can be there, and you would say, like for myself, I could be sitting here doing a show, and I could be smelling cigarette smoke like someone's got it right underneath my nose. And I know who it is. It's a loved one of mine that had passed, and they just want me to know that they're okay and that they're thinking of me. That's it. That's it. It doesn't have to be anything else. But I think that other people are looking for something to validate their fear of the passing through that door, or their fear of being judged on the other side with whatever their human story is right now. And fear is the greatest indicator that people really need to stop for a minute and say, what am I thinking? What's going on? Where is this coming from? Before we get to that point, perhaps?
Yeah, exactly. I wish everybody could feel how we feel, you and I and many others, right? Because it would help them with that fear factor that they're going through. And it's when I lost my dad in November 2020, fear. I was terrified. I was like, where's my dad gone? I had so many questions, and that put me on this path of writing books about this on my journey for answers. And I was scared. I thought, is he just gone? Is he on the other side? And what's on the other side? And I was actually sitting. I'm talking to you from my house right now. I'm upstairs in the office, and I was sitting at my desk here, working on my my second book, Life After This. And I just had, a fuzzy head. I couldn't think. So I took a break from working on the book. And being a guy, I started to look at trucks. So I found a website, and I'm looking at cars and trucks, right? And on this website, there must have been 40,000 trucks. I picked one, and I'm looking at the photographs. And it showed the front of the truck, the back of the truck, inside the truck. And the dashboard, it showed the touch screen, the infotainment screen or whatever and on the screen was a radio station, and it was like 96.7 and the time of the day. And the song that was being played was called I Am Alive, and it was by a group called the Parlotones. Now, if you back up 60 seconds, when I had this block on writing the book, I actually called out loud to my dad in this room. I said it out loud. I said, Dad, if you can hear me, I miss you. I love you. I don't know where you are, but I hope you're happy. I hope you're safe. I love you. Please stay in touch. And then I started to look at these trucks. Now, what are the chances I would, within 60 seconds, I would click on a truck, click on that photograph, and on the screen of the dashboard, it would say, I am alive.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's a sign. That's like, come on. And if you play that song...
because he's just eternal energy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. He's sending me a little note to say, it's like a little wink. It's like, hey, son, I'm okay. I'm alive. I'm on the other side. And if you play that song, Dr. Jeanette, I've never heard it before. It's I Am Alive by the Parlotones. It's very spiritual. It blew me away. I was like, oh, my gosh. I pulled it up on YouTube, and I was in tears. I was like, wow. You know, and I don't know. It's moments like that that give me no question that we do cross over, that our spirit is above and beyond what we have here, and they are with us always, our loved ones.
You know, I think about one patient that I had. She allowed me to share the story before she passed, and I had gone to her house on a Monday and kind of evaluating the situation. Went on a Tuesday, and I'm like, okay, let's get some more information, medical, health, what all this other stuff. The third day I walked in, and I was like so confounded, and the first words that came out of my mouth were, what do you really want? And she says, I already know, I want a heart transplant. I said, and how do you see that unfolding? Here's the doctor's name. I looked him up. He's in town. Can we go? I took the paper from her, called up the doctor. He was in town in New Orleans from Paris. Within an hour, we were on our way to the doctor's. We got to the doctor's, and he looked over all the information I had given him. I had all of her reports and everything. And he looked at me, and he said, okay. And then he looked at her, and he said, thank you, and I hope you enjoy your day. She looked at him, and she said, am I dying today? He says, not today. He said, but enjoy your day. And I knew exactly what he meant. So we left there, and I said, okay, so we were in her van. She had enough oxygen, and we drove all around town and looked at all the places she used to live and all the places she used to rat around when she was young and all these other things. And then she was getting low on oxygen, so we went home. And then within 2 to 3 days, she was on her way to the hospital again, where she would have her almost last breath. And then when it was very close, they all took her to her home, and she had a huge party. The house was filled with balloons and colors and everything, and she went out with the glory that she wanted to. But I'll tell you, in the middle of all of this, I kept saying to her, why are you not letting go before, all this happened? And she says, oh, well, I have a partner, and, we just got this new house, this new car. I said, honey, I looked right in her face. I said, honey, you're going to be gone. You will no longer have to pay another bill. There's nothing you can do to change it. It has nothing to do with you. Period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that if you can let go of some of the guilt or whatever you think you are carrying on, when you go through that door, your humanness does not go with you. Yeah. Many times people will come to me and they'll say, well, I want to know if they're okay on the other side. They have nothing else to do but be okay because they left that story here.
Yeah.
And I think, can we understand that our story, our experiences, and everything we go through is only a story of this human lifetime? So if we are an eternal soul, we're not dragging our old stories with us. It doesn't come with us.
Right. It's like acceptance, isn't it? It works on both sides of this. It works for us, the people who are left behind. We have to accept. And for those who are about to depart this world and cross over, they need to accept something too, and that is that, like you just said, your necessities here and your troubles here don't go with you to the other side. So you don't. There's no worries or concerns once you cross over. You haven't got bills to pay. They're not going to come and repossess your car, or you default on your mortgage and you're going to be kicked out. It's time to let all of that go. But yeah, it's acceptance for everybody concerned. Yeah.
But then everybody says, but I left it a mess. The answer is, can you effectively change your whole life story in a whisk?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Let your family and friends take care of that.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And just as you and I have shared on the other show, is that truly it's about being able to say, set up your life so that your family and friends don't have to be burdened by that. You know, I see these ads all the time. Have another person co-sign on your credit card. And I'm going, no, because then you're going to leave all your debt to them. Don't do that. You know, don't co-sign anything for anybody. You know, hey, I'm a lone soul. I'm going through that door, and this is the way I'm going, and I'm not influencing or dumping on others behind. I think we get stuck in the idea that our life story has to overlay upon each other because we have to be so intertwined in everybody else's business. In other words, well, if I'm their mother, I should have to take care of them, and they should still love me, and this should be that. And I make oh, my gosh, that's a human story.
Yeah.
Put it on the table and say that's a human story. Put everything out there. Yeah. And then you say, what can we take from this? John, perhaps might our capacity to carry grief, sadness, sorrow, and struggle be reduced, and might our heart and our thoughts and our mind and our consciousness open up to accept things we might not know the answer to?
I think, nobody knows until you're walking in their shoes, right, if you're ever in that situation. But if I knew that I had a couple of days to live or a week to live, whatever, but it was happening soon, the most important thing to me would just to be with my wife, be with my daughter, my loved ones, just to be with them. I don't think my mind would be, oh gosh, I've got this to sort out and that I've got to do this for you. I'll let them deal with that once I'm gone. I want to spend every last minute just with the people here and prepare myself mentally as well that, I'm going to be leaving this place and going over to the other side where, I'll see my dad again. I'll see my dog and I might see my grandparents, right? Somewhere, I can't remember them because I was so young when they passed. But my family tree will be up there, I'm sure. But certainly my dad and my dog, they're the thoughts that will be on my mind, I've no doubt. It won't be, oh, my closet's a mess, or the garage is full of tools I need to sort out, and the shed, oh my gosh, I need to get rid of that old lawnmower I've kept for years. It's like they're the last things on my mind, I think. I'll let everybody else worry about that once I've gone.
But then also, too, John, I think about the idea is that when we do cross over and we do see our loved ones, we will feel them by energy, okay? Here's the other story. We don't recreate this existence of living with other people or places or things when we're on the other side. When we get to the other side, we may recognize someone by a sense of feeling that they give us. However, we don't turn around and start, I'm going to now have an eternal life with my dad and my dog and my life, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't happen. So that's very important to understand, too, is that you are not recreating your life through all of these times in which we put on the human vehicle to be able to have a lifetime. It is not that way.
Yeah, I spoke to my wife about this because she asked the question. She goes, well, when we cross over, will we physically see my mum and dad and your dad, Rich? I mean, will they? And I said, well, I don't know, but the way I see it is I won't see my dad's face, but his spirit will be there, and I will just know. It's like that love connection, the DNA, whatever you want to call it, but we're connected. So when I cross over, I'm not going to see my dad standing there in a suit because he was always in a shirt and tie. And I'm not going to see my dog the way he was at 3 years old, 9 years old, 12 years old. I don't know.
Right.
But I'll just feel him. It's a totally different concept to what we have here, where we see people as they are, whether they're tall, skinny, blonde, brown hair, whatever. It's not like that when we cross over, I'm sure, right? It's more of an emotional sense than a physical sense.
Yeah. It definitely is. I mean, just as I can sit here and feel, like when I smell the cigarette, there's no cigarettes around me. There hasn't been for decades, you know what I mean? But if you can distinctly say, oh my gosh, what is that? Or I can go into a medical office and there's this one doctor that I go to. Man, when I get inside from the waiting room to the inside part of his office, wow, I can almost not walk. I'm banging into the walls. I'm dizzy. I have a headache. I don't feel good. I can't answer his questions. And I'm going, man, this is really weird. And I even said to my husband, I said, man, do you smell that? Who has that perfume on? It stinks. He goes, I don't smell anything. Somebody must be in here. And what it is it's a neurology office. And you think about it, a lot of people who have Alzheimer's and dementia pass through that same office. So I'm picking up on all of their energy of them, the confusion of that time before they leave or after they leave. And I think that that's so very important to share these stories, what you and I are sharing today, is because many people don't even recognize these are in signs and information, but perhaps maybe others are unaware of this, So people say, well, I saw it. I didn't think anything of it. Well, think something of it, Stop for a minute and say, whoa, this is calling my attention. This is bringing me to the forefront and having me question. Or, hey, maybe this made me sit down. All of a sudden I got dizzy and I had to sit down. Why? What was that? You see? So are we sharing tips and inspiration for others to maybe look at a different perspective in their life, perhaps?
I think so. I mean, I like you say, it's all about coping. It's about hope. And that's not I'm taking a gamble or a risk if I'm just hoping. But if you come to a time and place in your life when you suddenly, it's like a light switch, you could say. Sometimes it's not for some people. It can take time, but you suddenly just believe. You remind me of a time when we went down to Georgia to the retirement home to see Alison's mother. And on the retirement campus, the place itself, there was rooms that we could rent really cheap, so we didn't have to stay in a hotel. Anyway, we were staying on the campus in one of the rooms, and as we had our suitcases, we put the key in the door, we opened the door, and as we stepped in, I immediately had this sense that somebody had died in that room. It just hit me.
Yes.
I looked at Alice and said, somebody's here, somebody's died in this room. Now, that's easy to say because it's a retirement home, right? It's full of old people, sadly, and that's what happens. And Alison said, no, I don't feel anything. So a few minutes later, I was in the bathroom washing up from the long drive down there, and I got this, I'm talking ice, cold chill all over my body, and I had goosebumps on both my arms, and I showed Alison. I've never seen goosebumps like it. It was insane. I was like, oh my gosh, what's that? And she goes, I don't know. I was like, wow, I was getting freaked out. And then I went into the closet to hang up some clothes, and for some reason, Alison got her cell phone out and started to take a video. And she put it on video, and she's recording. And as I'm walking around the bed in the bedroom, there was an orb following me. Now, you could think, oh, it's a speck of dust and blah, blah, blah. And we analyze it, right? We try to dispel all the theories and all this and think, okay, we're left with the truth. And 100% it was an orb because it followed me around the room, and it was going around my head. It was going all around my waist. It was going behind me, coming in front of me. It was a little tiny light. And then I made a joke. I couldn't see it, and Alison didn't when she was recording this. But when we played the video back, that's when we saw it. And the orb disappeared when I cracked a joke. And I said, do you think the spirit's in the bedroom with us? And then suddenly the orb went, did a quick 360 spin and then disappeared off camera. It disappeared. At that point when I made a joke about, do you think it's here with us? And it flew away like it knew. I don't know, but it's a good 45-second video, and this orb follows me around the room. And I've never seen anything like that before. We take videos all the time, and we don't see that. But that was just, I had that feeling that somebody had passed recently in that room. And then I get the goosebumps, and then we saw the orb. And I don't know. I can only share what happens, and it's, believe it or not, It's,
But see, in essence, John, that is where you and I are open vehicles. In other words, we are open vehicles to be able to detect the energy and be able to cross with spirits. So you and I have that capability. And what we are talking about today in sharing stories is that many people are now coming into this set of gifts and abilities, and they're saying, I don't recognize it, I don't know what it means, or perhaps they're getting a little frightened by it. Once you start feeling and sensing and knowing, it becomes very commonplace. I know for myself, I can distinctly remember the day I said, gosh, what is with you people? Can't you feel that? Can't you smell that? Can't you touch that? Don't you hear that? Don't you know that? And everybody said no. And I'm going, wow. And I distinctly said, is there something wrong with me, or is it that you all are that closed? And it was that they were that closed. They were not there yet. It was not going to happen. But now in the year 2025, I can tell you, it's exponentially the number of us are growing in which people can say, I feel or sense. And they need a little bit of guidance. What is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I'm sensing? What is it that's going around me? What is it about? And that's where you and I come in to be able to share our stories of what we know, how we've had it happen, and potentially watch out for these signs. And that's what we're sharing about being in life or the afterlife, right?
Exactly. And, you know, unfortunately, personally for me, I can't, wish it to happen. I can't just call out to my dad and I get a response. It's not like sending a text message and he's going to text me back, right? And it's just, these things just happen. And it could be it's out of the blue most of the time. I'm not even thinking of my dad or thinking of a spirit or anything like that. It's just like, whoa, you know? And for me, it really started back in 1999. At the time I was living in Liverpool with my daughter. She's always lived with me. And she was 6 years old at the time. She was in her bedroom. I'm in my bedroom. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And she woke up and she shouts, you know, Daddy, can I sleep in your bed? I was like, sure. So she comes across, she gets into my double bed, and we're falling asleep. And then I heard a voice in my bedroom. And it was a loud voice, and it went, Richard. It sounded like, I swear, it sounded like the devil. It freaked me out. And so I sat up in bed, looked around the room, pitch black. I thought, oh my gosh, somebody's in the house. There was nobody there. And I thought, well, maybe I was falling asleep. It was in my head. But then when I looked at my daughter, 6 years old, she looked at me and she goes, Daddy, what was that? And I was like, oh my goodness, she heard it too. So the next day I'm walking her to school, and I asked her, and I said, hey, what did you hear last night? And she goes, I heard a voice, Daddy, and it called your name. I was like, oh my goodness, you know, it's for real. Anyway, long story short, I heard the voice 3 more times after this. And then 6 months went by, and there was nothing, 6 months. And then my cousin, Stephen, told me that his wife was having a psychic over at his house. And could he spend the night at mine? Because he didn't want to be there because it was going to be full of women, and he didn't want to, be part of it. And I said to him, Stephen, I want to come to yours. I want to see the psychic. So he started to laugh, and he said, oh, fine. So I went over there. Me and him were the only guys there, but I went in to see the psychic. And I walked into his kitchen, sat down, shut the door, sat down with this lady I've never met before. And for 60 minutes, I kept my mouth shut. And for 60 minutes, she blew me away. She told me everything about my past, my present, and my future. And as soon as I walked in, Dr. Jeanette, she said to me, she started to laugh. And she goes, Richard, I'm not laughing at you, but there's a tall man standing behind you with a long coat and a flat cap. And I was like, oh. So I said nothing. I didn't want to give this lady any clues. But at the end of the 60 minutes, I said, who is this man behind me? And she goes, it's your great-grandfather. He's here to protect you. And I said, oh, well, I've heard this voice in the house. And she said, it's him. I said, well, why is he trying to scare me? And she said, no, he's not scaring you. He's trying to wake you up because you're going nowhere in your life and you can do so much more. So he's trying to get your attention. I said, well, he has, but I wish he was a bit calmer about it. And we laughed. Yeah. And I left. Now, I'd written down on a piece of paper everything this lady had told me. I went to my parents, my mum and dad's house for dinner that night. And I told my mum and dad what had happened. And I said that this psychic had told me that I was going to move to America. Now, this is in 1999. I didn't move here till 2001. And I had no intention of moving to America. So how that lady knew, I don't know. But the lady also told me that my great-grandfather had worked in America. Now, I didn't know that. So that was my dad's granddad, I guess, my great-granddad. And my dad looked at me in shock. He went upstairs, came back down, and he handed me a black and white photograph of my great-grandfather on the Empire State Building. He was one of the English guys that came over from England to America to help build the Empire State Building. And again, how did this lady know this? So, and this, like I say, this was back in 1999, and that really started some of these, I wouldn't say funky things, but spiritual things that had happened to me. And I don't know why it happens, why it's happening to me at these odd occasions, but it fascinates me, it blows me away. I can't explain it. I just share the stories in my book and leave it as that. And it's just mind-blowing. But some people have that strong gift where they can look at you and they can read you like that, and they can see spirits around you. It's amazing.
I think also, too, the idea is that are we open to the potential idea that there's more about this existence than we know, but we also don't need to know. We truly don't need to know. We don't need to know everything that goes on when we go through the doors. We don't need to know how we go through the doors. We don't need to know, what if you take your last breath, what does it feel like? Or what is the trauma going to feel like if I, before I die or whatever? Or how am I going to die and how is it going to play out? We don't need to know any of this. Perhaps sometimes I think the idea is that that's the human story again, Ooh, if I know it, the story, how it's going to play out, then I will use my control, my human control, to be able to avoid it. Do you see? A lot of times people will say, oh, you might be in a car crash or whatever, and they'll be like, okay, I'm never going to get in a car again. So that will never happen. So in other words, they create their own story from their own fears and their own navigation of self-preservation. Perhaps?
Yeah, I think if we don't know, it creates that fear that we've spoken about, right? If we don't need to know all of the answers, but if we know just a little, if we believe in just a little of this, then that can quell that fear. It can help us, keep us calm. And again, going back to that acceptance. But you're absolutely right. We don't need to know everything. And I don't believe any of us will ever know everything, right? But if we can just accept, stay calm, and just, stay in that moment where we are going to come to that end, our body will let us go and our spirit will cross over to the other side. And like I say, you've had experiences, I've had experiences, and it tells us that there is a spirit that crosses over and that we are going to be at peace. We shouldn't be fearful of it, but we each have to get to that place, I guess.
Yes. In closing, I think also, too, the idea is that we are eternal souls. If we think about that, we say, oh, that's awesome. For myself, I've got a lot of past lives. I can recount so many of them. And I'll say, hey, I made it through then to get to where I am today. So I'll make it through today to get wherever else I'm going and be free with that. So really what we wanted to talk about today and to inspire the listeners is about being able to say there's a potential out there. Whatever it is, we don't have to know what it is, but we have to be confident in ourselves and say, you know what? My soul's got this. Whether or not I know the dialogue, whether or not I know the description, or whether or not I can validate it and turn around and say this is the reason why and have all the answers, just say, my soul's got me. I'm okay, and I'm going to make it through. That's truly the inspiration that we hope to be able to give, no matter what part of life you're in. Yes?
Absolutely, yeah. Just keep an open mind and know that everything's going to be okay.
Yes,
it's really that simple. Yeah.
Well, John, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. Can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Sure, absolutely. Easiest and best place is to go to my website, richardjohnallen.com, and there you'll find details of me, my story, my journey, my other books, as well as the podcasts that I've spoken on, and you can also contact me there too. And any of the books that you see that I've written, please go onto Amazon and just read the reviews. I'm absolutely humbled by what people have written about my books. It blows me away. I'm so lucky to be sharing my story in this format and in this way, and people really are taking to it and contacting me with positive feedback. So I appreciate it. I love it, and I'm glad to help. Yeah.
Very good. Well, John, it was such a pleasure to have you with us here today. We thank you so much for the inspiration and tips. And when you have your next book, you feel free to come back on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette. Thank you.
If you'd like to find out more information about John Allen, again, the book we spoke about today is Heavenly Realms, A Journey into the Unknown, Discovering the Mysteries of Heaven and the Afterlife. Please do click on the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to the website for more information. And it is about saying it's going to be okay. Truly know it has no other choice. Everything will be okay. But to understand, we have been around this world many times before. We have many past lives, and we will have many future lives, and it's going to be okay. If you need help, you need inspiration, reach out to John, reach out to myself. I have compassion sessions that are available on my website. There's a very extensive page there. And also be able to say, ask for help, have a conversation, and that will ease some of your fears. It will take away some of the angst and the grief and the sadness, and it will also open you up to say, what if? If we can live in the land of what if, might we feel freer, as I always say, to dance in the ethers. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.